We open in December 2022, meeting Dan Foster. He's on the phone, desperately trying to land a new job by listing his resume. He walks into a Christmas party at his house, immediately pawning off bags on his young daughter, Murray. His wife, Emmy, asks for help, but Dan waves her off. He's on a very important call, positive he's about to land his dream job at a research lab. The party hits a snag when Murray presents a letter from Dan's father. Dan doesn't even read it. He just tosses it straight in the trash, coldly telling his wife that the man lost his right to be a grandpa.
Well, I think he forfeited the right to meet his granddaughter when he abandoned your husband.
Ouch. He steps outside to finish the call, only to get the news someone else got the job.
We found someone else.
Dan is completely crushed. He sulks back inside and flops on the couch to watch the World Cup with Murray. Being a little science nerd, she starts telling him all about Selfman Waxman, the man who discovered the tuberculosis vaccine. Dan, trying to be a good dad, points at the TV and says those soccer players are the best in the world. Murray says she wants to be the best too. Dan gives her some classic dad wisdom. To become the best, you have to do what no one else wants to do. Right on cue, the TV broadcast goes insane. A giant swirling portal opens up on the soccer field, and a squad of armed soldiers steps out. Their leader announces they are from the year 2051.
30 years in the future.
A global war is happening against an alien race called White Spikes. Humanity has been annihilated and they desperately need help. Well, that's one way to interrupt the game. Fast forward several months. The world is now sending military forces to the future, but it's a disaster. Only a quarter of them ever come back. With losses mounting, the nations of the world get desperate and start a civilian draft. Back in the present, Dan is trying to teach his biology class, but his students are completely checked out. He asks what, if anything, excites them. Only one kid, Martin, raises his hand to talk about volcanoes. He's really into volcanoes. The other students just ask, why bother studying? We're all gonna die anyway. It's a bleak vibe. Dan tries to rally them, saying the world needs scientists now more than ever. Just then, his phone buzzes with a message. Confirm your draft status. He goes to the nearest MPES office, where a recruiter casually informs him that according to their records, you're going to die in 7 years.
13th, 2030. You'll be pronounced dead.
This, weirdly, makes him a perfect candidate for conscription. Dan's like, hold up, but they just ignore him and slap a futuristic tracker on his arm. They tell him it tracks him, will assist him in the future, and cannot be removed until he returns from 2051. When he tells Emmy what happened, she becomes distraught and insists they have to run to go off the grid.
You, me, and Mary, we have to run.
You have 24 hours. I don't know how to run from the government.
Dan says he has no idea how to do that, but Emmy reminds him that he does know someone who does. Reluctantly, Dan goes to an aircraft hangar to meet this mystery man, James. As he's about to start removing the device, he can't resist a sassy little dig, saying, it's weird Dan's here, since he never asked him for help before. This hits a nerve. Dan explodes, yelling all he ever wanted was a little help, but he never received any. Angry, Dan storms out, but not before instructing him that he should never send letters to Murray anymore. And there it is. This man, James, is Dan's estranged father. Dan gets home and Emmy sees the device is still on his arm. Heartbroken, she tells him he needs to tell Murray.
You have to tell her.
He finds his daughter in the backyard digging. He tries to ease into it, saying he's going on a trip.
So listen, Chickpea, I gotta go on a trip.
But she's smart and immediately understands he got drafted. She's devastated. He promises her he will come back and gives her a final hug before he asks to leave. Before they jump, Dan and the other draftees get a crash course in weapons and first aid. This is where Dan meets Charlie, a fellow scientist who talks a lot when he's nervous, which is right now. A grizzled guy standing behind them named Dorian bluntly tells Charlie to keep quiet. Later, Charlie whispers to Dan that this is Dorian's third tour to 51, which shocks Dan, since almost no one goes back. As they talk, they both notice something strange. All the soldiers from the future are kids, but all the draftees going to the future are in their 40s or older. They conclude it must be to avoid some kind of time paradox. They're also informed that the White Spikes disappear every 6 days to rest, a period the future soldiers call the Sabbath. That's the only window they have to send new troops in and pull survivors out. This means every draftee is in for a mandatory 7-day tour. That evening, as Dan and Charlie are talking, Charlie sharing how his wife was sent in the first wave and never returned, an alarm suddenly blares.
Let's go! This is not a drill! Soldiers,
Wait, whoa.
The young soldiers from 2051 scream, "This is not a drill." Everyone hastily runs towards the portal room. Dan asks Lieutenant Hart what's happening. She yells that the last research facility in 2051 is being attacked. If they lose it, the war is lost. They enter the portal room, and as the massive gateway powers up, Dan quickly shows the panicking Charlie how to turn the safety off his weapon.
And that's your safety. Okay.
People start getting sucked into the portal, but just as Dan is about to go in, an error flashes on the screen. The landing coordinates are gone. Dan and the others materialize miles up in the sky over burning Miami, all of them falling to their deaths. Fortunately for Dan, Charlie, and Dorian, they managed to land in a swimming pool on top of a skyscraper. Others are not so lucky. Dan quickly gets out of the water, checks his gun, and walks to the edge of the roof to look out over Miami in ruins. The team now consists of just a few survivors. While the military investigates the bad jump, Romeo Command contacts the team. Dan responds. Seeing he's ex-military, they explain the situation. They're going to bomb the entire area because it's overrun by white spikes. But first, Dan must lead a combat search and rescue operation to save some stand-in scientists in a nearby building. Dan confirms the mission and immediately regroups all the non-disabled on the roof. Soon after, they're down on the street, which is littered with dead soldiers. Dan asks two soldiers, Nora and Cohen, to run to the next block to scout for white spikes. They run up, confirm the coast is clear, and the team follows. As they slowly make their way to the building, they finally get inside and start trying to find the lab. As they search, Dan is notified by Romeo Command that white spikes can smell blood from a mile away, and they should be careful. All of a sudden, they spot the science team. They're all dead.
Command, we found your team.
Romeo Command immediately changes the mission. Forget the scientists, retrieve the hard drives and biosamples from the lab. While the team searches, Nora and Cohen, who are keeping lookout, radio that spikes are approaching.
Guys, something's watching us.
Dan finds the vials with samples and is simultaneously notified that the aircraft are being deployed to bomb the area in exactly 6 minutes. Dan orders Cohen and Nora to meet them on the 7th floor, and from there the team heads to a rear stairwell to get out. After entering the stairwell, they hear strange noises. Suddenly, white spikes appear from above and start attacking.
Contact above!
While shooting at them, the team attempts to run down and escape. Dan tries to fend off one by himself, but Dorian has to save him, killing it and yelling that they can only be killed by shooting the neck or belly. With the airstrike 3 minutes out, Romeo Command sends Humvees to pick them up, but as the vehicles arrive, the white spikes totally devastate them. Several more team members are killed as they attempt to escape. The airstrike commences. The team, now down to just 7, is trying their best to escape the bombings. As they're chased by white spikes, Cohen and Nora both get hurt in the tunnel, right where an F-22 Raptor is about to drop its bombs. Sacrificing themselves to delay the aliens, Cohen and Nora stay behind, shooting at the spikes while the rest of the team runs. The 5 barely make it out in time. One day later, Dan wakes up beside Charlie at a military base in the Caribbean. They soon meet Dorian and find out they were the only 3 who made it. Then, Dan inquires about the white spike claw Dorian has hanging around his neck. Dorian responds that it's a reminder. Apparently, Dorian is going to die from cancer in 6 months, something he learned when he got drafted. He tells them the only reason he has come back several times is because he wants to die his own way, on his own terms. Dan is then summoned to speak with Romeo Command. He soon learns that the commander is Colonel Murray Forrester,
Same place that you're from?
his daughter.
You mind Mary Forreston?
I'm Mary Forrester.
All grown up. He's taken aback. When she describes how she has a PhD in biotechnology from MIT, Dan gets visibly proud. She explains, however, that he was not brought there so she could reunite with her father. The only reason he's there is because she made sure of it so he could help her with a critical task, but she refuses to tell him what.
They walk into a military tent where Colonel Murray shows Dan that they have figured out a toxin that kills male white spikes but not females. To learn how to make a toxin that kills them all, they're going to catch a female, and Dan is going to help them. On their way to a white spike nest in a helicopter, Murray tells Dan about them. One day, the white spikes were just there. They came out of northern Russia and spread, but no one ever found any vessels, crash sites, or any signs of them arriving on Earth. Dan then asks her what happened to their family between 2022 and when he died, but Murray coldly says they better not talk about it.
I think the less that we say to each other, the better.
They arrive at a nest where the military has already managed to corner a female and is about to put it in a cage. Suddenly, it breaks free and starts attacking. Murray descends into the nest to help the men get control, but fails, as Dan simultaneously sees a horde of male white spikes from the helicopter swarming the nest. He also goes down to help. Dan grabs one of the female's tentacles, making it angry and tricking it into shooting itself with its own sharp spikes. Because of that, they manage to get the upper hand and put the spike in the cage. The helicopter takes off with the cage while Dan and Murray climb out, but as they do, more white spikes arrive. The duo has to run to a Humvee, driving and shooting their way out with a heavy machine gun. Somehow they manage to escape and arrive at a beach. Murray is upset, yelling at Dan for putting himself in danger when she needs him alive. But Dan just tells her he can't stand by and watch his daughter get eaten. This breaks the tension. Murray then starts telling Dan what happened with their family. Apparently, Dan left her and her mother. Dan interrupts, insisting he would never do that. She continues, becoming sad, and explains they separated and then divorced. She had so much hope he would fix their family. But then, on her 16th birthday, she got a call that he'd been in an accident. At the hospital, she saw his last heartbeat on the monitor as they pushed her aside, trying to revive him. Dan is speechless and disheartened. A helicopter arrives and takes them to an ocean base, all while Dan ponders what she said. Once at the base, Dan meets Murray in her lab. She's trying to synthesize the new toxin. By testing thousands of combinations, they will hopefully find one that kills the female by the next morning. Dan asks if she has a way to deploy the toxin once she finds it. She only answers cryptically that she has a way, but that it doesn't matter if they don't get working toxin. Dan has 21 hours left before he's sent back. He asks if she wants any help, to which she responds it's a one-person job. He tells her that Emmy would be proud of her if she saw her just like he is, after which he leaves. The morning arrives and Dan comes back to the lab. He knows he's there for a reason and asks Murray again what his purpose is. Finally, she explains they are living on borrowed time. Since they have no resources left, she needs Dan to take the toxin back to his time to mass produce it. That way, they will stop the war from ever occurring. As she has just finished talking, the computer pings. The current test is 100% bond. They have found the toxin. Seconds later, the female white spike awakens and makes a loud call. Suddenly, the entire base is breached by white spikes. Dan and Murray grab guns and make a run for the helicopter pad. On their way, the duo gets cornered and has to shoot their way out. But as they continue running, Murray is hit by a spike, and Dan has to help her walk. Simultaneously, an automated voice announces through the facility speakers that there are 3 minutes left until time jumpers will be sent back. Murray falls down in pain, bleeding heavily. She tells Dan she can't walk and that he should leave her, but he won't. She says she's sorry and that she's glad to have seen him like this, like she was when she was young. Dan gets despaired. There's less than a minute until he's sent back. As Murray hands him the vial with the toxin, a white spike appears and tries to attack them. But the floor suddenly fails, and both the white spike and Murray start sliding towards the edge. Dan jumps and catches her, but his grip slides and she falls. In full desperation, Dan leaps after her, but he's teleported back to his own time in the middle of his jump. He wakes up in 2022, holding the vial containing the toxin firmly in his hand. He tells Lieutenant Hart, who was there, that they must mass-produce the toxin and send it back. She informs him, however, that the portal in the future is down. No one can get back. He sees Charlie beside him, who made it too. As he gets home, he embraces little Murray. That night, Dan explains to Emmy that he met Murray in the future and that they made the toxin together. He also tells her that no one knew where the white spikes came from. They were just there in the year 2048. When his wife then suggests the aliens could have landed years earlier, a light bulb goes on in Dan's head. Next, Dan visits Dorian in a bar. Dorian also made it back and agrees to help him find a solution to stop the war from ever happening and find out when the white spikes truly arrived. They take the white spike claw that Dorian has and go to see Charlie. Charlie analyzes it and sees it has volcanic ash on it, but from China, not Russia. Dan can't understand how volcanic ash from China ends up in Russia, and Charlie asks him if he knows of any volcano expert. They end up back in Dan's biology classroom. The three ask Martin, the volcano kid, how a creature from Russia can end up with ash from China under its claws. Martin geeks out, explaining it has to be from the Millennium eruption 1,000 years ago because you can still find ash from that eruption deep inside the ice in northern Russia. The team realizes the white spikes must have arrived back then, crashed, and become frozen. When they make a simulation on how the ice melts in Russia, they see all the ice is gone by 2048. After their discovery, they ask the US Air Force to fund a covert mission into Russia. The Air Force won't do it. So instead, Dan goes and asks his father James to fly them there, telling him he needs his help. James immediately agrees. They load a plane, and Lieutenant Hart joins them, having brought as much newly produced toxin as she could. Once in northern Russia, at the likely location, they drive around on snowmobiles. Suddenly, they experience interference and can't use their instruments or compasses. They detonate the ice and walk into a crack that is revealed. Eventually, they stumble upon a large vessel stuck in the ice. They open a hole with the metal saw, and Dan tells James and Charlie, who stay outside, to shoot anything that comes out. They enter and find the cockpit, where they see an alien race that is not white spikes. They continue and eventually find a compartment with several white spikes in it, figuring that white spikes are just cargo. As they inject some of them with the toxin, the other white spikes start awakening. Before they manage to inject them all, several break free and go for the exit. Dan informs Charlie and James to be ready. They manage to stop 3 of them as they come out, but a 4th manages to escape. The team inside the ship picks up C4 explosives. While giving Dan his white spike claw, Dorian tells Dan to save his daughter and get out to track down the one that escaped. While Dan is running back to the snowmobiles, the others inside find a whole colony of white spikes waking up and starting to attack. The whole team inside sacrifices themselves. Dorian yells out just before he detonates all the C4 that if he is going to die, he is going to die his way. The ship explodes, killing all the white spikes in it. Dan makes it back to James and Charlie, and James tells him that the one that escaped is a big one. Dan says that's a female, which they definitely have to stop. He and his father jump on 2 snowmobiles and start tracking its footprints. They split up, and shortly after, Dan sees the white spike start running towards his father. However, James has managed to make a trap, so the white spike bites a dummy, and he starts shooting it. This time, however, the white spike really starts going for him, but Dan manages to hit it with his snowmobile just before it reaches James. The two then shoot at it, making it retreat backward until it falls off an edge. They figured that it isn't dead, and they're right. Suddenly, the white spike appears from nowhere and hits them. It shoots Dan in a leg and goes for him. Both Dan and James manage to take out its eyes as it gets close. Dan injects a toxin into its arm and thinks it's over, but the white spike bites its own arm off, stopping the toxin's effect. Tries to go after Dan, but James cuts his own hand to save his father, making the white spike go after the smell of his blood. Dan, who doesn't want to lose his father, then jumps up on it and stabs it with Dorian's claw. Finally, he picks up another dose of the toxin, injects it into its mouth, and kicks it off a ledge, killing it once and for all. They lay down on the snow in exhaustion, and Charlie joins them. In the final scene, Dan comes home and gives his family a big hug, after which he introduces Murray to her grandfather. All the while, we hear Dan's voice saying he will never leave this family.
I'll never leave this family because my best future, it turns out, was always right in front of me.